beautiful book. It's really well designed. Performance appraisals and phrases for dummies, and it's an HR employment management guidebook, I guess. Would you call it a guidebook?
I'd call it just hands-on and current tools to help managers and supervisors more effectively do performance appraisals. In the past, they were not received well by many employees. The system was once a year, intermittent feedback at best, a lot of mystery, and all that is gone. It's far more on the line of coaching, two-way communication, employee development, building employee skills, upskilling, and looking toward the future, career development. It's a very different kind of process now. And the phrases are just to help managers if you're not sure how to write a particular sentence on a particular area of the employee's performance that you think would really help the employees. Here's a way to do it, all the way from excellence and superior performance, all the way down to performance it's a little subpar and would need some additional coaching and guidance. So that's where those phrases come from. Over 3,300 of them, which is kind of interesting because you find you write phrases, suddenly you start talking that way as well. Does an excellent job and tries, puts forth full effort. No, that's not really how you talk. But for the phrases, it's helpful to get people thinking of how to really best express what the employee might be showing and demonstrating at work.
That's truly interesting. Earlier, Diana was on, and we were talking about tech workers across Latin America, Central America. And you are in Bogota, in Colombia. And tell us about the tech employment scene in Bogota.
No, I mean, in Colombia, I mean, immigration has always been, has changed in Colombia. As I said, like a couple of episodes ago, Colombia wasn't a place of people coming into Colombia. It was a place of people leaving Colombia, living out of Colombia, moving to other destinations, in particular the US, Europe, Canada. But like right now, things are changing a little bit. We're receiving more and more migrants. Colombia's experimented like all of the wave of Venezuelan immigration, and that we're start to see some tech aspects. Some people have been hiring into tech roles. People that are skilled, foreign skilled workers, and it's something that has started to happen more recently in Colombia. A few years ago, before like the current political situation, both in Colombia and in the States, we saw a movement of companies that were shooting from Venezuela and reopening in Colombia and bringing foreign workers who had this special technical skills, who had this expertise and know-how of big corporations that were settling in Colombia because headquarters were opening subsidiaries that were previously in Venezuela. So we started seeing a big flow of foreign workers, not only Venezuelans, but like for instance, Indian people, Chinese people, even US people who had this expertise and knowledge that were coming to Colombia to like in order to set up the operations here of their subsidiaries in Colombia. So that's where we started seeing some flow of technical workers into Colombia. But it all started, as I said before, most of these companies had US companies or European companies that had offices and companies in Venezuela. With all of the political situation, these companies, most of them started opening in Colombia. They started moving to Colombia. And that's how we started seeing not only of this big flow of Venezuelan migrants, but also these companies that brought people with specialized knowledge that came from several countries, as I said, like the US, and in Indian national especially for these companies that related to software companies and also Chinese in terms of infrastructure. So that's how we started seeing a big flow of tech foreign workers in Colombia that became like a fuel, in terms of our economy here.
And what about homegrown talent? Are there special education tools being used in the public schools, or is that just limited to private, more affluent schools?
Well, I mean, there are projects to make like to reinforce in what we call the public education. And in public education, public schools, they have like the option to go through accounting, like something that in private schools you don't find. Like they have a strong background in accounting, and I think this is part of the project to give extra tools to future generations to have a specific skill that could be used, like to build a future if they cannot afford later on university, or college education. So that's what I have been saying. I do think like in public schools, they should reinforce more specific knowledge, not only in accounting, but also in AI, for instance, or all of these new things that where we can see the future going, so they can build on tools that maybe they cannot afford later on. Because I mean, in public schools in Colombia is not for everyone, is different. As if we say public school and in the US or in Canada, that is more common because education is really good. Here, people who go to public schools, they have to be in a specific socioeconomical status. They have to be qualified as people with no income or very little income before they can actually apply for public school. So the system is very different. So it is very likely that kids that attend this type of schools, they will not be able to attend college or university. Why? Because our public universities are very few, and it's very difficult to secure a spot. So we have all of these generations that finish school from a very poor socioeconomical status, and then later they can't afford further education. So they should be provided with certain tools where they can actually be able to find a job into what is going to be future jobs, right?
Interesting. Yeah. Hampton, you're going to get into this with your slides in just a few minutes. Would you like to comment on this this specific topic that Diana was just talking about the preparation of the educational quality in the public schools in Colombia, or as an example across Latin America? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
It's an inhibiting, limiting factor across all of Latin America, and it's just the roots of the limitations are found 150 years ago. It has a lot to do with a class and caste system that still exists. It's a target-rich environment with human capital. The enthusiasm, the aspirations of the common person anywhere in Latin America, from the Guatemalan and Mexican border all the way to southern tip of Chile and Argentina. I mean, it's huge. But Darren's right. The public education system in all of the countries is very limiting, and that's why you see people with affluence sending their children to schools in North America or Europe almost exclusively. And that leaves the balance of the population, the younger generation, to really have to struggle to figure out, well, how am I going to get to where I want to go? Even with the value of the internet and a lot of online tools, it is a struggle, because the opportunities for people that are 18 to mid 30s is limiting. There's a value that's put on what's the certification, what school did you actually attend, what's the brand, what's the reputation, it's a very subjective society across Latin America when it comes to the placement of individuals in the education process, public and private, and then what does it mean after you graduate? Where did you graduate from? Who did you teach? And so, who taught you? So, despite all the positives across Latin America, that is a problem. I've helped. Let me see. I'm in and out of Panama quite a bit. I've helped 7 colleagues get their children into U.S. and European schools because they were not going to accept going to even what they would consider prestigious schools in different parts of Latin America. It could probably be fixed, but there are reasons for it, and it is probably, at least in my opinion, when it comes to business, it is the most significant limiting factor for the success of businesses that want to enter the markets in Latin America, and also for people who want to thrive and develop businesses in Latin America and want to either work domestically or export. It's a problem, and it's not going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah. Diana, would you like to comment? I'm not trying to embarrass you or anything, but I just want to make sure the dialogue is flowing.
I totally agree with Hampton. That's the situation in particular in Colombia. If you did not attend to a recognized school, then you're not eligible to go to the good universities, even if you have the money, which means you're not going to be able to secure a good job in the future. And even in that situation, you need to have connections sometimes to get a good job. And that's very sad. And that goes back to public education. That's why these kids need to be like, the system needs to implement more tools for them, because you have these kids that attended public education and they're never going to be able to go to college or university. First, the money, and then if they attended public education, chances are like universities are not going to take them unless they're filling up a quota to be like, like social quota that you have to have someone, but chances are like unless you're the best of the best, if you're like a regular student, normal student, and you manage to get 3 jobs to pay for university, but you came out from high school in a public school, you're not going to have a chance. Of course, there's someone who may show up and say, no, I made it, but that's one in the middle, 1 in a million, 1 in a million. So that's the situation. And even if you manage to attend to a normal school, middle class university, chances to getting a good job are very limited. And especially there's also like the language barrier, because most public schools or middle class schools, they do not teach English, or it's very poor English. And in this globalized world, if you don't speak English, you're not going to get a job, or you're going to get a minimum wage job. So it's going to be very challenging. So yeah.
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, that's the situation here.
Yeah. Hi, Anna. Meet Diana from Bogota, Colombia. And Anna is with us today from Miami.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Diana. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon.
Yeah, welcome. Okay. Anna, just above you on the screen is my friend Hampton Dowling. He's in Washington, D.C. area. He is a global investor and has some interesting slides to show in just a few minutes. And also, Anna, this is Ken Lloyd, Dr. Ken Lloyd in L.A. He's an author and for a long time was a New York Times syndicated columnist. What was your theme on that?
Yeah, the theme in those columns are really focused on basically the workplace and any issues that you're facing, particularly in dealing with managers, subordinates, customers, sales reps, anything in the workplace that was people related. I'm being harassed by my boss. What do? I need this job bad. Questions that people would have about how to be more effective and successful at work and dealing with the kinds of, if you will, crazy things that can go on in the workplace. So it was that type of workplace advice column.
Interesting.
I think everything is, I think we're all evolving and there's no one rule fits all companies. And we see a lot of changes. Years ago, we would say, this is the manner we do it. Our company does it like this. But now everybody's looking, what else can we do? How are we working? How is everything evolving? Which countries and what mindset? You're in California. I just saw that there's a new law that the governor is signing of employment in California, no?
Mm, I don't
There's
know.
something new coming in.
Not
Well,
sure
Yeah.
which one you're referring to, but yeah, but the big point is that, yeah, agility for organizations and individuals is critical these days. Everything is changing so fast. I mean, look at the changes in AI just over the last year and a half, 2 years. It's remarkable, and adjusting to that. But yeah, I'm sure that Governor Newsom is signing some employment laws right now as we're
I
talking.
just saw something coming in, yeah.
Yeah, not sure which one this might be.
Anna, tell
Yeah.
us a couple of minutes, please. Tell us about EMS. You started this a long time ago, and you've expanded. Give us and the audience out there who will be watching this worldwide,
Yeah.
tell us about EMS.
Yeah, we're a global mobility company. We assist companies when they're doing transferring their employees worldwide. So we do their immigration, their relocation, the tax for their employees, and their moving portion. So we have offices in the U.S., in Miami, where I reside, and in Spain, which are our two headquarters, and then we have all South America. We have offices in Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Peru, Uruguay, Mexico. I think I didn't miss any major city, and here in Florida.
Right. Okay, good. And is there much transfer action between Miami area and the region?
Well, Miami is South America. I don't know. Even though we wanna divide a little bit more the country and the regions, at the end, I think the Miami has grown because there's so much investment from both from Europe, because it's a gateway into Latin America, and from Latin America into Europe. So companies, they do a hub here in Florida, they understand the American market, and they start expanding into the US. And it's very easy to do, to do business and to control the businesses from Miami for its situation. It's very easy. And also the language. At the end, the cultural, the way we handle businesses here in Florida, I mean, or in Miami, more than just Florida, because when you go north, it's a little bit, and there's a different mindset. But when you're in Miami, the way, it's open to investment, it's open to doing business. So it's very easy to from all the perspectives, from relocation, taxes, everything, it's good here in Florida.
So it's a bit of news. I'm preparing to launch an in-person series again of meetings, and Miami is on the top of the list, along with New York and Washington, and of course
You
California.
need to learn Spanish. That's all your only challenge when you're coming here.
I saw an ad on Amazon about a pocket translator.
Oh
The
yeah.
latest gadget, and I figured that could be my ticket to ride.
The only challenge we have with all those apps is that we stop using our brains. I don't know if we use our brain in a different manner. Let's put it this way. Years
That's
ago, we
interesting.
would use more, our memory and numbers and everything. Now we have everything in the iPhone or on our phones, and we lose some agility.
Oh, at my age, I'm looking for agility, but also to solve a problem. So Hampton, tell the audience out there in TV land about your one of your jobs. You have many opportunities you're dealing with, and one of them is that you're the editor of a global transport magazine that's based in Panama. Is that correct?
I'm one of the editorial directors of a magazine called Transports Magazine. It's Latin America's largest logistics publication. We cover most of the top tier logistics expos and conferences in Latin America. I've been associated with the magazine since 2007, somewhere in there. I'm in Panama about every 6 weeks. I'll venture over to Colombia and down to Buenos Aires, and it really depends. But Latin America is holistically dependent on the various forms of logistics, and the only way the continent stay connected. You know, obviously the hub of most logistics servicing Latin America is Panama Canal, one way or the other. It's a very unique environment compared to other continents in the world. But the logistics is enormous, and it's rapidly expanding with foreign investment all across Latin America.
So Panama, the city of Panama, is it's a huge economic engine for the whole region, for the Western Hemisphere.
Well, Panama by itself is probably the center of financial commerce in Latin America. You know, it's not the largest city, but a lot of it is because of the Panama Canal, the throughput and thoroughfare of logistics. You know, history going back to the days of the explorers really centered on Panama because it had the shortest distance between the Atlantic and the Pacific. So that's just continued over time. Fortunately, Panama has made it very business friendly. There are a number of laws that allow corporate headquarters to be established in Panama and pay no taxes and a lot of other incentives. But it has the connectivity. It has the large airport hub that allows to service Latin America. So it's a gateway between, as Anna said, Panama or Miami, which is, I don't know. I mean, I think everybody of affluence that's in Latin America ends up going to Miami 2 or 3 times a year. It's just kind of the way it is. But Panama is the sort of the gate for finance, education. There's a lot of Panama is just sort of the portal to Latin America in many respects. It has a lot of competition, but and a lot of it's because it's centered on the dollar, and you know, it's a nice place to do business.
So I want to invite you to show your slides and take us through that. I cannot figure out how to upload them.
Oh well, I don't have it. All I have is the paper copies in front of me, so
Okay. So let me see I can show them, but I can't run it as a slideshow. For some reason, my brain isn't getting around that process. And, you know, Diana and I were trying to figure it out about an hour ago.
You have to have a kid. You have to have a kid.
Ah, that's it. I don't have one here today.
You need one of those tech kids that we have on board that they know how to do everything.
Okay, let me see what I could do here. It's something going wrong with my screen here. Talk about tech. What is going on? It's fading away. I hope you can hear me okay. I've got to see if I can do this. Oh my. My screen seems to be going white here, fading.
well, that's not a good sign. That has nothing to do with slides.
I know, I know. Oh boy. So how can I stop this? What is going on here? You know, this has not happened before, and I don't know what to do. Uh, um, okay, here we go. It's getting back to normal. Slides. So can you see that?
I just see everybody's smiling faces.
Yeah. So I have it behind, and now I'm trying to make it work. And my screen share has disappeared here. Oh, it's back. How can I do this?
I think you have to put share and then you share your screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to click it, but it's Zoom is not responding well here. And there's oh, it's coming back again. So I've got it uploaded in the background, but it's, and I'm going to hit share again and see what happens here.
Yeah, there it's coming.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay, you can see that. Now, do I click it
yeah.
again?
No, don't do anything. Then you put it on presentation mode.
Okay, and how do I do that?
You go to the slide
Yeah, click
and
on
click.
that slide.
Yeah, let's see how it looks.
I clicked on it. Okay. Can you
Okay.
see it's full size now? On my
Yeah,
screen, it's full size.
A little slideshow.
yeah.
All right, so I'm going to try to make it work. Okay.
It's working. It's working.
All right. Hampton, is this slide two? This one?
Well, just back up to the front.
Okay.
All right. Well, it's just these slides are more the big picture that my thought was that it would allow those of you that are really focused on human talent and mobility could then sort of cast or frame your comments. And here I always find it important to, when you talk about a particular region, to at least have 30 seconds to look at the size and scale of the region you're talking about. And Latin America is a whole continent. When you talk to, I don't know, when I talk to people, they understand what Asia is, they understand Europe, but in Africa, people don't really understand how big Central and South America is. I mean, I'm not trying to separate Mexico from Latin America, but it is really part of North America. And people generally think of Latin America as pretty much Central and South America, and it's enormous, large, so, and rather mountainous. Not not many areas of flat expansion. So you go to the next slide.
Okay.
The the outlook for the region, if you take away Cuba and Haiti, is rather is positive. For a variety of reasons. Economic growth across Latin America is slow. It's there's nothing rapid about it, but it's steady, and it has been steady for about 2 or 3 years. If you take away Haiti and Cuba, the average GDP of a nation is around 3%, which is pretty high, considering that for about 25 years it was 1.5%, except for 2 or 3 countries. Inflation is relatively low. Inflation average right now is about what inflation was in the US 2 years ago. And unemployment is manageable. So for Latin America, these figures are a huge positive, to the point that 41% of the population as of last year was considered middle class by international standards. Now, it's rather skewed because those numbers are really plussed up, I think, between Argentina, Chile, and Uruguay, I think. But it's a very positive statement that the economies are going in the right direction, the leverage capital and the economic status is rising. But it's challenged, and these challenges aren't insignificant. As a hemisphere, a lot of organizations that are designed to create political unity, provide economic stability across all the nations. These organizations are rather idle. They haven't really been busy since 2018 or 2019, which is unfortunate. Another aspect that's in the here and the now is that repatriation of income from the United States to Central and South America has been averaging somewhere between $15 and $20 billion a year. It's a lot of money. I mean, individuals that are up here in the US have been sending on average 80% of their income to families in Central and South America. That's tending to dry up right now. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then there are the politics that are associated with trade between individual countries, 1 or 2 countries in a trading environment, having some mixed results, which affects the overall income and other aspects of economic growth across the hemisphere. So moving on to the next slide, Ed, kind of, one slide with some detail. The diagnosis of the wellness of Latin America, has always been it's always struggling to be positive for a number of reasons. And notwithstanding the positive notes that I described earlier, a middle class that's actually rising. Latin America, from Mexico all the way to, down to Antarctica, is faced with the repatriation of over 17 million people from the United States. And that's happening. Right now, there are base camps being constructed on the Mexican-US border that are going to house 75,000 people. And those base camps are also being replicated on the Mexican side of the border. And there are also large camps that are being developed, being constructed right now in El Salvador. So you're going to see millions of people that have left Latin America, have departed, and created a vacuum in many ways. They're now returning, and it's putting a lot of pressure on public services that weren't planning on that. The fact that over 15 cartels have been labeled as terrorist organizations isn't trivial either. It's not the people themselves that are in the cartels, the bad guys. We're also talking about the sources of financial support. The individuals in Latin America and other countries that have been propping up and supporting these terrorist organizations. It's a very broad web of interlocking entities and agendas that have supported these cartel organizations that are bad. And now that they're labeled as terrorist organizations, It changes the way the United States and other international law enforcement organizations treat the people and treat the entities that are in Latin America that support those terrorist organizations. And that's significant. The leaders, a lot of the political parties across the individual nations of Latin America, they don't get along with each other. And they don't get along with each other very well at all. On a personal level, they just don't like each other. And there are reasons for that that go back in history. They go back, 100, 150 years. A lot of it's family oriented, intermarriages, it's political parties that ebb and flow. It's rather unique in the world that the leaders of countries that are in such close proximity, they just don't get along with each other. They don't go golfing, they don't travel, and when they meet for hemispheric conferences, the dynamics are just not positive, and it's recognized. But somehow it worked through it, but it is a limiting factor. The Latin America in general continues to have weak public sector institutions. A lot of it's culturally driven, a lot of it's corruption, but as much as they struggle, and we're trying to see changes in Argentina, we're seeing changes in Ecuador, even in Paraguay and Uruguay, but there are still some challenges of the public institutions, and those weaknesses have an influence on the progress and the upward mobility of the population, but they also present risks to foreign direct investment and in the expansion of domestic industry. Of late, there is a tug and war across Latin America as a hemisphere, but mostly as from individual nations about where's their allegiance? Is it to the United States or China? Not necessarily the politics, that's always there, but now it's more of supplying critical minerals and commodities that both China and the United States need for industrial, the advancements and meeting the requirements of industrial output. And that's important because trade and trade agreements are certainly of political in nature, and it affects security. It affects the inflow of foreign direct investment and what are the tentacles and what are the obligations associated with that. So there's a business side of it, a political part of it, and that affects domestic politics in Latin America, and that again flows into the leadership of the countries that don't exactly see eye to eye. They don't get along together. So the dynamics of mining and exporting critical materials and commodities it really has an effect on the geopolitical stability in Latin America. And then, of course, of late with President Trump, it's what about the Monroe Doctrine? I mean, it is an issue here in DC. Russia as a country has become has a very pronounced presence in Latin America right now. A lot of companies, they're involved politically. It's been a change in the past 3 to 4 years, and then also China having really managing. I think China now manages all of the principal capital seaports across Latin America, and that's important, especially when it comes to politics. These ports have dual military and commercial use by design. I mean, all this really affects international relations. It affects foreign trade policy. It affects freight forwarders, affects shippers. It affects export rules. All this is, I don't want to get in the weeds, but it affects it does have an influence on the economic growth across Latin America. But I mean, all these are negatives, but on the right of the slide are some positives, and they are very positive. Latin America is an extraordinary source of valuable commodities that are needed globally, and that provides a source of economic growth. With the right education, again, it goes back to what Diana was talking about. with the right education, the human talent, the source of human talent is huge, which obviously can promote expanded manufacturing and more efficient agricultural production. When it comes to mobility and human talent, again, Latin America is aligned with time zones across with North America, and not too far off from the European Union. So it's the aspirations and expectations of the average Joe and Jane, or Jesus and Maria in Latin America, is enormous. They look on what's on the internet, they see what's going on in the world, and they really want to aspire and achieve and grow. But these factors that are on the left side of the slide, they do provide a negative overshadowing effect. Some of them have been there for decades. Some are fading, but some are actually growing, especially when it comes to illicit trafficking and drugs. It's a business, and it does have an impact on the appeal and the presumed risk of doing business in Latin America. So then the last slide, Ed, just to wrap up, which would be the next slide,
Wait.
is it's somewhere.
Oh,
I know it's there. It was there.
yes.
No,
No, the 4.
we're going.
The 4.
That's it, right?
A lot of large corporations kind of view Latin America as the same, but it is changing. So I've listed some things that I have seen that play an influential factor in summary. Is that the disputes across the hemisphere, they do affect real growth. Institutions, as there are reforms going forward. You'll see that in Argentina in a very dramatic way, and hopefully it will set an example across Latin America. Illicit trafficking is actually growing in South America primarily. From the president of Colombia making comments that are rather positive about drugs, the president of Brazil, who many people think was wrongfully put in office, statements about some of these domestic terrorist and drug cartels having a positive impact on the nation, on the people. Some of these comments are surprising and have not gone unnoticed. And so the corruption associated with cartels is a concern. And another factor that affects business and the politics is the sort of the U.S.-China gamesmanship, and where the individual nations in South America and Central America fall in trade agreements, the nature of the agreements, and the obligations. Those are important. Those are truly important factors. But in general, given the fact that the GDP of the nations are rising to a higher average, there is a rising middle class, and even though the demographics of Latin America would suggest that it's an aging population, there is at least in my opinion, a real positive justification for increased foreign investment, investing in the education of people in Latin America, so that they in turn can have a return on that investment in terms of their contributions to industry and production. I've always thought that Latin America is underutilized. More people speak Spanish in the world than any other language. People kind of forget what the influence is from the Philippines to Latin America to Spain and parts of Africa. It's enormous. But Latin America is generally a very mountainous region. People tend to live in the cities. The transportation is not like it is in Europe and Asia and even Africa. the electric grid is very weak. I mean, Chile has experienced this year 3 days where nearly 24 hours at a time, there was no power available anywhere in the country. I mean, that's just a very surprising fact, you know, in the modern era. So there are limitations, but there is more than ample opportunity for foreign direct investment in the people and the institutions and the infrastructure of Latin America, which, in my opinion, and others, would have a high rate of return. So, for accessing and using human resources in terms of supporting the mobility of people back and forth from Latin America and supporting foreign direct investment, I think the opportunities are great now with less but manageable risk. So overall, it's a very positive statement.
Thank you very much, Hampton. This interesting perspective. Open for conversation. Diana, Anna, would you like to speak?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's very insightful what Hampton just said. I agree with everything he has said. I mean, there's lots of potential in Latin American countries, especially in Colombia, for center of excellence hubs. I know there's been like, you know, certain Latin American countries, including Colombia, have been growing as COEs, places for or tech hubs, expecting to leverage from a certain expertise that we're trying to build, but still, we still need more education. We still need to build more in our people to be able to bring out that potential out there. Likewise, we're under a political situation where many companies are on hold, waiting to see what's going to happen, at least for the following 2 years, where we get new elections. I was actually in a meeting at the Chinese Chamber of Commerce last week, and we were, there were many companies, leaders of many Chinese companies, and they're just waiting, you know, like companies are not leaving yet, but they're not investing yet. They're just waiting. And the fact that they're waiting is because there's still hope, right? There's still hope to see what's going to happen with the political scenario. Right now in Colombia, on top of the, you know, the weak areas that we have, which is like the public institutions, corruption, trafficking, we still have a new political environment, a new government where we have taxes and because it's on the left side, our current government, like many companies are scared. So they're waiting to see what's going to happen. But there's lots of potential. I mean, and we'll just see. We'll just see what happens. But I think like Colombia is starting to develop a little bit more in terms of their potential to build people to continue to become a COE for tech services. But yeah, there's still things that need to be done. There's still challenges. So let's see what happens.
Anna?
Yeah, there's a piece of the cake that's missing, which is Venezuela. I think Venezuela, the political stability of Venezuela could change the way things are handled and investments are handled in the region. That doesn't mean there's going to be a change. It's just that it's a fact that things in Latin America changed once Venezuela went into this is the system that we have at this point. I mean, a lot of people left the country. Colombia and all the region grew because all those investors left the country and they took their capitals with them and they invested, and all those talented employees or young kids, they moved out from the country. So that really benefited not only the region, it only also benefited the US and benefited the EU. So I think for the stability of the region, Venezuela could play, it's a big player. If things change or if the U.S. becomes tougher with the policies with Venezuela, I don't know what things will happen. I mean, the policy that the U.S. applies into Latin America, it's a big player for the region, because if we don't have the investment from the U.S., then it's the investment from Russia or China or some other countries are taking the main roles or taking place in those countries. We already see how they're challenging the investment of China in Chile. And why? Because instead of allowing the national investment to take over some very big projects, they're benefiting because of the price of the Chinese companies. So I think we have to rethink what we're doing and what is business and what's the role of being safe and what's in the benefit of the country, because not necessarily it's only the growth because we have a lower cost with some countries. We have to also think about what's safe for the region. And here I really like the presentation, because you mentioned the Monroe Doctrine, which we have lost from our, I mean, probably because young kids don't even remember what the doctrine says. But I think it's good to rethink about what we're doing with it and what happens with the countries that are aligned, and what happens with the countries that have not been aligned. And this is the changes that I think we have to reevaluate where we're going, where we're heading, how we want to take things from here on, which I think we're in the hurricane. Now we're on the hurricane, so we don't know where things are going to land, but the winds are going everywhere. So we're trying to take a guess where to go and how we should, even here in the US, I mean, the rule of law is being challenged for good or for bad, but it's being challenged. So believe it or not, that affects the rest of the world. We're all interconnected. So I really liked your presentation. Congratulations for putting things together.
Well, people forget that Venezuela used to have one of the largest economies in the world. I think it ranked 4th in the world for a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
there's just so much potential. It's just it's all the limiting factors are fairly.
Well, I think most of the region and the countries, they have a natural resources. It's like the management. Maybe you have a company that's very good, but if you don't have good management, or if you're not all aligned, then it doesn't work. And this is what we have to learn, or it's something to think about, how we're handling the worldwide relationships, because it's not pulling back and forth. It's getting aligned and doing the best for the whole humanity. And I think at this point we are in the transition. We're challenging some rules, which I think are old. They not necessarily apply at this moment. But on the other hand, where are we heading? So maybe after a crisis, let's get into something that might be a balance. So we're waiting for a kind of balance, because I think after COVID and with the AI and internet, everything is evolving so fast that I cannot see the north. Years ago you could predict. Nowadays, I mean, I don't see predictions.
Yeah. Ken, do you want to add in?
Yeah, just again to thank Hampton. I think this was such a really balanced presentation where you talk about the pressures and very open about them, the opportunities, and then, if you will, the prognosis. And I think looking at that whole photograph really gives just a compelling picture of where things are going, and what the whole aspect of dealing with that part of the world, that very important part of the world, and as you said, large part of the world, is really so centralized. So I thought it was a terrific presentation, very educational, very informative, and as I said, quite balanced, which I really enjoy.
I believe that one thing that's really important, probably the most important thing, is that Hampton, enjoy South American wines more than any others. I went to a wine tasting not too long ago. It was all wines from South America. I love it. I think they're better. So I just an
Have you
unbiased
tried the
opinion.
Carmenere? Have you tried the Carmenere from Chile?
The focus of the wine tasting that I went to was mostly wines from Chile, and my son was on the carrier George Washington that just went around South America on the way to Japan, and they were supposed to stop in Valparaiso, but it didn't work because of weather. So the next stop was Lima, Peru. Well, the husbanding agents moved all the wine that was going to be for diplomatic receptions from Valparaiso up to Lima, Peru. And so even though Peruvians didn't really like having a lot of Chilean wine at all the receptions, my son did and took a lot of wine. And so he has all this Chilean wine in Japan where he's staying right now, and he's just loving it.
Yeah. But take
I-
take
so-
taste the grape Carmenere. It was, they thought years ago, they thought it was not existing, and then they found that and because in France it was a grape seed that
Right.
they thought it was not existing, and then they found that in Chile they did have it, but the Chileans didn't know. This is years ago. So people that know about the grapes and the wine, try it. Try Carmenere. It's called Carmenere, and it's not expensive. It's very good.
Yeah, how do you spell that?
Carmenere. Carmenere.
But loves Diana. I guess she doesn't like wine. That must be the reason.
No, because she's from Colombia. In Colombia, they have rum
Yeah, they're
or aguardiente. So,
Well, this is
and
a
by the
really
way,
great
you're in
cultural story.
California. You're in Los Angeles, no?
Yes, I am.
Ken is.
Yeah.
I'm outside Washington.
You're in Washington, yeah. I'm gonna go to Los Angeles in 2 weeks. In 2
Nice.
weeks. Yeah, it's a nice, except politicians. I mean, everything is.
That's sort of true everywhere, though, isn't it? We even saw that in Hampton's presentation. So, yeah, that's welcome to the world.
Yeah, very interesting. So I buy Chile wine in Trader Joe's, which is
But look for this one. I'm
yeah.
gonna write it here so you guys take a look. If you find it, try it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Carmen.
Yeah, exchange
Kind
messages.
of grape kind.
Yeah,
And it's not
yep.
expensive. It's very good. But I find very expensive the Californian wine. I mean, it's too expensive for what you get. I think you get more Spanish, depending of the tariff, the Spanish or the Italian or the Chilean or Argentinian
Tax they put
wine.
on California wines is enormous. There's like 6 different taxes. So it's not because of the vineyards. It's not because of the people that produce it. But
Yeah. So coming back to mobility, the only issue when you work with Chinese or Russian companies, Chinese are very difficult. You need to understand their culture in order to supply services. So, depending of how you deal with them, the relocation is completely different than from an American company or a European company. Their budget is completely different. The immigration processes are completely different. So there are other kind of challenges coming back to mobility.
Thank you very much for sharing this information. You'll all get a
So,
copy of this program later today. And I appreciate you being here. I'm sorry our friends in Brazil and Panama couldn't join us, but maybe they'll want to join the next edition. And I welcome you all to come back. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
so thank
Nice
you,
to
Ed,
see
for
all of
putting
you.
things together and, doing something different, that it's not the daily basis, the work that we all have.
Yeah, Hampton, thank you for joining us. You were well received, obviously, and led the way of
Oh, I gotta go to
intellectual
tennis,
thinking.
so I
Yeah,
have to go to
yeah.
tennis now.
You're going to share the presentation, aren't you, Ed?
Yes, everyone will see it.
Yeah, because can I take some of your ideas?
You
They're
can,
all yours. They're all just, when I visit Miami, you just, buy the first glass of Chilean wine.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being on the program.
Thanks, Ed.
Bye. Have a great day. Bye
Be well,
bye.
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.